Here, move my purse.
Hi, Ashton.
Hi there. How are you all?
Good. How you doing?
Thanks.
Hi, Pete.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
Hi, Aaron. Meredith, how you doing?
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Angela.
Hello.
Hey, Kevin, Kip, how you doing? Quinn, Mary.
Hey, Kip.
Hello. Hey, Meredith.
Oh, there's Ashton over there. Hey.
Councilmember, my apologies. Thanks for letting us know.
No problem. No worries. I just looked and was like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on.
We've got.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing today?
Hey, Quinn.
Hey, Quinn.
Just so everybody knows, we are live on YouTube.
Pete, that's a nice background you have there. Is that a green screen or is that the real deal?
I wish it was the real deal right now. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah,
No,
it's
That's our barrel room at our Angliana facility.
But don't get mad.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Kip. I'm gonna steal that for my next Zoom meeting. So if you see me, full apologies. I'm gonna knock you for that. That's a really cool look you got going.
Having some audio issues.
That's pretty cool. I did ask the mayor if there was any tastings involved here. So,
Virtual tasting.
hey,
Freddie Johnson did a virtual tasting yesterday on Visit Lex Facebook page.
Very
For
cool.
those of you who know Freddie
Be right
Johnson.
back.
Oh yeah, he's a legend. That must have been a really good tasting.
It had 17,000 views. It was pretty cool.
Wow. Was it live?
I'm not sure if it was live or not, if they just videoed it. It may have been live. Kip, do you know if it was live? You all did it, didn't you? Kip is staring off into the space. It may have been live. I'm not sure.
Very cool.
I'm saying the liquor barn delivers. I'm just saying we could work that out.
You could. I could show you bottles.
All right. Let's see.
Got
Is that Andrew Bishop that just came in?
Yes.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, guys.
I think we're just waiting on DH. And
Sounds about right.
Yep.
Mary Quinn.
I'm here. We're just having a little school lunch at Mary Quinn's middle school. So I have the video on right now.
We want to watch.
I'll spare you.
Are you accepting toddlers into your school program?
I can only take 10 and above.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'll
Do for you, Mary Quinn.
drop off whiskey with the toddler.
Okay, now we might be talking.
There you go.
And my cat has just joined.
Uh,
Every
And
time
what's-
I'm on a WebEx call, the cat jumps in my lap.
And what's the name?
This is Sasha.
Oh, cool.
She likes WebExes. She ignores me the rest of the day, but as soon as my computer comes on, she's in my
Where's
lap.
DH?
There's DH.
How you doing, DH?
What's going on, guys? Sorry for the delay.
Doing good. I'm just trying to grow a beard like yours.
It's really easy during quarantine, man. You just don't do anything.
You would think I'd be able to get that done during quarantine, but I don't think I'm as genetically blessed as you to grow.
Well, some would use a different word than blessed, Amir, but you know.
All right. I think we have everybody here from this subcommittee, right? So we've got myself, Meredith, Pete, Andrew, and DH. Everybody can hear okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Amir, before we get started, I've just got one statement I've got to read for our open meetings law. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting is being held via teleconference pursuant to Senate Bill 150 as signed by the governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. So there is my little bit of legalese out of the way. Thank you very much.
Good. Ashton, did you want to kick it off with intro too, or you want to kick it right to me?
It's up to you. I know Quinn, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you've been doing a lot of these. If you maybe wanted to give just a high-level overview, I think most of the folks on the call know what the purpose is, but just to kind of give folks some context for the larger effort that's going on, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So again, thank you everybody for joining us today and being a part of this. I'm Quinn Welch in the mayor's office. And as Ashton said, we have had
We need
feedback somewhere.
Yeah, I think if everybody goes on mute, then we won't hear it. So
Yeah.
I think that was Kip. He was on there twice.
I'm not anymore. I got
Okay.
it fixed. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'll
Thank you
mute.
very much.
All right. My bad.
No worries. All right. So where was I? Yeah. So Mayor Gordon and Mary Quinn and Bob Quick over at the chamber, we've all kind of come together to join to form this economic response committee. And this is one of 16 subcommittees. The idea is to kind of put together a document that will inform several different industries within our community on best practices and minimum benchmarks and requirements on how we reopen here in phase 1 of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we put together 3 questions that we think that each subcommittee should answer by the end of our work. And we're asking that each subcommittee finish up by Friday of next week. So that would be a week from today. Those 3 questions are: number 1, what are our plans for reopening and what are the benchmarks and guidelines that are needed to reopen? Number 2, what do businesses and organizations in our sectors need to do to reopen safely under the governor's 10 rules to reopen? And number 3, what is our process for scaling back operations while safely maintaining operations in the event that we face a second wave of COVID-19? And in addition to that, I know Kip and Mary Quinn have sent around a questionnaire of things for you to think about as well as we go forward. I'm not sure, Ashton, what kind of response we got on that, but if we don't have much of one, that's okay. We can kind of use that maybe to guide our discussion today. But yeah, with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Amir.
Quinn, just real quick, we're pretty lucky. We did have several people respond to the questionnaire, which is great. We got some really great content, but for those of y'all that haven't, or if you have additional thoughts, but thanks for going over the questions and reading them and answering them in a very thoughtful manner.
Yeah, our pleasure. I think most of us, all of us, submitted it, so that was very helpful. And thank you everybody for getting that in and taking the time and doing the best you can. And I think what we'll do going forward, Quinn, just correct me if I'm wrong. I think you said we had a week to get these answers to you guys. So I'll take some notes on these, and maybe via email I can follow back up with some typed up suggestions for a group response to them, and we can just kind of kick it off that way. And so maybe just for the first question, point A, plans for reopening, benchmarks and guidelines. I can go around for the committee members, everybody, and ask, and I would say maybe try and we can talk a bit about in general, but then also try and maybe highlight and narrow down to some specifics and actionable items for each of these, so we can try and narrow a list and identify like keywords and things we're all saying about benchmarks and guidelines. So Pete, do you want to kick it off for benchmarks that are needed to reopen for Altec? Pete, are you on mute?
Yes, there we go.
There you go.
I think from our standpoint, what we're really looking for is initial guidance from the mayor's office as well as the governor's office on, when they're deeming that it's safe. We want to make sure that we're following proper guidelines given by the state, by the CDC. We want to make sure that we're in accordance with all those guidelines. From our side, we're definitely looking to open our retail shop first and foremost, and then we're not going to dive directly into tours by any means. The majority of our business on site actually goes towards tours and being on the Bourbon Trail and having those sampling opportunities. We know that's not going to come back immediately, but any kind of directives from the official offices will go a long way in making consumers feel safe, making the customers understand that they can come back in.
Great. Pete, just can I ask you one thing to clarify? Are you guys planning on opening? I think this is important. And I know it's important for our operation to sort of see what everybody else is doing, and there's a number of factors to weigh. So I just want to confirm, are you going to open, I think May 20th is when the governor said it was okay for distilleries, breweries to open their retail shops only, no tours, no tastings. At this time, are you guys planning on opening retail?
Yes, at this time we are planning on opening our retail shop back up on that day.
Great.
Again, that'll be in very limited capacity. We'll limit customers that can come, the number of customers that come in, we'll limit the number of staff that we have on hand and make sure everybody's wearing the proper PPE as well.
Great, great. Thank you. Meredith, I'll kick it to you. Same thing.
Okay. We are not going to open on the 20th. We've decided not to open our retail shop. We have been doing curbside for quite some time now. So we're going to continue curbside pickup. That works very well. And there's very little interaction between the consumer and any of our staff members. We are very close to finalizing our plan. It's a very thorough, deep plan on how to open up based on the governor's guidelines for reopening. We took those guidelines and we've developed our plan that way. We reviewed our plan with our senior leadership and everyone's aligned. I have to manage not only Buffalo Trace, but 1792 Distillery, and then our distilleries in Virginia and in New Orleans. So we're having to deal with 3 different states and 3 different sets of guidelines, but it's still one overarching plan. We've got plan for sanitizing, PPE, temperature checks for visitors, hand washing stations everywhere, and sanitizer everywhere. We're not quite finished. Once we're finished with that, we're going to share it with the Governor's Office of Health and with the KTIA and the state tourism offices. I'm willing to share that with you all too if you want to see it when it's done, but it's pretty thorough. We've got a lot of steps involved, and it's phased, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. We decided not to open up to retail until we were ready to do tours and did it all. And we're also, when we do open for tours, we're going to limit the number of tours, and every single tour has to be a reservation only tours and reservation only tastings. And then we're also going to limit the number of people that are in the visitor center at any given time. And if we do have walk-ins who want to take a tour at that time, they'll still have to go online and register if there's something available.
Right.
The really fortunate thing is that we were in the middle of a renovation when this happened. And the silver lining in all this is that we were able to do the renovation without visitors there. So we've tripled the size of our gift shop in our visitor center area. So that's going to allow us a lot of room to spread people out.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, and appreciate the offer to share the guidelines. I can speak as sort of a bigger independent or craft, if you will, watching what larger, operations such as yourselves, who have built great companies with great people on them. So great teams of people with great insight at all different levels. I think that would be something that'd be very beneficial, obviously to distilleries, but even breweries and everybody, just because of what a great company you guys have and how many people you bring through there. So I think by you guys interpreting the governor's guidance and then using that to make your own plan, is obviously very smart and in compliance, but probably a lot of great insights have come out about how to interpret what the governor is saying in the guidelines. So I'm sure that'd be very beneficial to distilleries and breweries as well. So thank you.
Okay, as soon as it's ready, as soon as everything is finalized and approved, I'll circulate that.
Great, thank you.
Meredith, sorry, Amir, excuse me to interrupt. Do you have a sense, Meredith, of approximate timeline? I know it's probably a big lift, but we're just curious if it might match up with our timeline to get recommendations to the governor as well.
The timeline, from what we checked with our lobbying group, and they felt that the visitor centers and attractions in general would probably not be until phase 3. But so that would put us somewhere around probably July. But I'm not, because we were running on our rolling 12, we were running 300,000 visitors, and we were expecting 3,000 people on Oaks Day. So it's going to be a challenge to kind of keep that number down, but a rough guess would be around the beginning of July, but we're still waiting on the governor's direction. I can tell you we are not going to open until we are absolutely 100% sure that the safety of our team and our visitors is the primary purpose of how we get this done.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
I think that's a very important point. I'll just say, reinforce for ourselves, is that we have a manufacturing operation going on behind it all. And that's really the core of our business. And we have to make sure that we're running a safe place for people working in the distillery that supports those core operations, And so that's a big concern. Aside from just, getting the retail and the tour and the hospitality part, we have to really be careful about that.
Yeah, that's one other thing I wanted to mention is that our tour does go through our bottling hall, and it will not when we reopen. So we are going to limit interaction with our team. I know that our manufacturing team is very concerned about having tourists on site. So we are not going to we'll have a plexiglass window that you can look through to see the bottling hall, Blanton's, but we're not going to have to take people through there at all.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Thank you. DH?
Yeah, so we're, a little bit different than you guys are, Amir, that we look much more like a bar and a restaurant than we do a production facility. We actually don't offer like tours on the hour like you guys do, Meredith. So it's a little bit different animal for us. Amir, I just sent you over some of the guidelines that the Brewers Association has sent out to us. And that's basically just some information that Montana sent out. And it deals with some brewery distillery specific items, but it's more so of protocols and things like that, guidelines, benchmarks to follow in the tap room or your tasting area. I can tell you here at the brewery, we have made the decision. We don't have a certain amount of time yet, but we are not going to open on the 22nd like other restaurants are able to do. I assume that the governor's definition of restaurants will include breweries that have food pieces as a restaurant, like Ohio did. But we are not going to open then. I'm not sure the amount of time that we're going to remain closed afterward, whether it be a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, a month. But especially our facility here in Georgetown, after some conversations I've had with the mayor here and the county judge here, we will be a pretty big draw. I don't mean that to sound in an arrogant way, but there's not a lot going on out here on this side of Georgetown. And so we want to mitigate and avoid any potential that we would create for a large gathering that us opening up would do. Also, we kind of want to just see how everything goes for the first couple of days, week, 2 weeks, to quite honestly learn from other people's mistakes. I think there are going to be people that have great ideas that they're not malicious in what they do, but I think they're going to go about the thing the wrong way, and we want to learn from that. So we plan to stay closed for an undetermined amount of time, even though we would be allowed to open up.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all important stuff to watch. And I think it leads into one of the questions we'll discuss later, which is what happens if we have to scale back operations. And
right.
That's something just everyone needs to keep in mind, unfortunately. So I think, bringing people together and I think what this is really for breweries and distilleries is touching on the fact that we all have different type operations that have some public exposure as well as a manufacturing component. And they differ, right? Some people are much more skewed to just being open to the public and they come through and that's the crux of their business. Other people are much more manufacturing oriented. And how do we all balance that? And so I think trying to get guidelines and understanding that we have different, priorities and concerns, we really do run the full gamut. So
the other thing, Amir, that we're concerned about is that, we have to balance this delicate relationship of being as we all know, a producer and as well a retailer at the same level. Yeah. And so there may be some benefit that we could gain that, I'm not sure whether Bishop, you guys will be allowed to open or not without having a food piece inside the four walls there, but it may be some, a little bit of arm linking solidarity saying, hey, we're not going to rush out of the gate and try to capitalize just because we're considered a restaurant. We may want to wait a little bit to share that love with some of our key retail partners and as well as some of the other members of the brewing community that may not fit that definition to open up.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure, has the governor or anybody put out guidelines? I know we're supposed to understand how we would roll back our business if we had an infection with an employee or a customer, but I'm not sure if the governor has put out guidelines of what we're obligated to do. And I think that that's something people may want to keep in mind because, you hear about these meat plants across the country that get workers infected, and then they're mandated to shut down. And I think that that's something people obviously, should keep in mind too, because there could be a required mandated response if somebody does get infected at your place of employment. DH, thank you. Andrew, we'll kick it over to you. What are your thoughts?
I guess to kind of just pick up right where DH left off as far as looking at what we might do as an overall industry. I kind of get where he's coming at with that, and I can understand, having some level of solidarity and not just saying that, hey, we want to shoot off and capitalize. But I think a lot of it's also going to come down to everybody's situation. We just took on a large project downtown. We have loans that are still asking to be fulfilled and things like that. So we have a lot of financial obligations that we were not able to push to the side. So, I mean, we are very conscious of trying to reopen too quickly and unsafely, while also trying to balance out with, getting things back to where we can sustain a business. So, I mean, in my packet that I filled out, I think that consumer confidence is paramount. I think that whether you get rid of all the social distancing regulations or not, that if people are afraid to leave their house or enter a facility that has other people in it, then the other points are moot. So I think that it's really going to come down to how can we convey to the consumer and to our tourists and our patrons that we are taking all the necessary steps to ensure everybody's safety, which is why we've had our chief science officer kind of looking at the efficacy of UVC light, just to kind of have maybe a standard cleaning procedure during off hours, to where we know as long as the light has hit the surface, we have a sanitized or sterilized surface. So we are trying to look at, making sure that our employees are safe, that they have a good environment, because as soon as we get an employee sick, whether there's guidelines or not, I foresee us shutting down operations, just because it feels like the responsible thing to do. At the same time, being in a different situation than Country Boy Georgetown, we have a place down on the corner of Limestone and Vine Street in downtown. And then we're also out in the Distillery district, which is kind of its own enclosed campus. So I think we're also looking at two different things. We have basically a full restaurant downtown, so we would at least fall under that category. And then, as DH said, we're still figuring out whether tap rooms will be seen as Ohio and able to open up in the same regard. So we're looking at both of those situations differently as well. One thing is taking a look at occupancy levels. Downtown, we can only fit 50 on the floor. So if we're running 33%, if we only have 17 people on each floor that we need to keep up with, it sounds a little bit more doable, and it's not as big of a lift, and we don't have a patio to police or anything like that. So if we're talking about nuclear families of groups of 6, theoretically, we would be supervising 3 groups of 6 per floor, which to us sounds feasible. So we feel like we would probably try to push at least the downtown location to open up on May 22nd. Hearing the date, May 22nd, yesterday, I haven't had a chance to speak with people like you, Amir, and Goodfellas, Wisebird, and everybody else around us, to kind of see what everybody else in our neighborhood, what the Manchester location is doing. Because I do agree with DH, at least in some level of solidarity. If everybody else down here doesn't feel safe opening up and Ethereal's swinging open their doors, I mean, I don't necessarily want to be the 1 out of 7 down here that's open while everybody else is playing it safe. So I think there's going to be other social pressures as well as we get a little bit closer. But at least in my eyes, I see the downtown, we're going to push for May 22nd, and possibly the same timeline for Manchester Street, depending on what some more of those guidelines coming out of both CDC and the governor's office and our local mayor's office. So we plan on being compliant and following to the T just about, any guideline that comes out there, while also trying to figure out, as DA said, we might be some of those guys trying to do something creative and trying to do something we think is going to work. And then we might be the ones getting burned. We're going to try not to be, but it's a balancing act between, trying to get back open and get things running, and then keeping everybody safe. And if nobody's going to walk in our door when we open, then it doesn't matter. We need to make sure that people have confidence when they step in the door, that they're going to go home and feel just as good as they did when they walked in.
Yeah.
And so I think all of our focus is going to be on, this is what we do pre-shift and post-shift to make sure that our employees are safe, and same with the customers.
Yeah. Well, I think you touched on something really important, and that is just the consumer confidence. I mean, you know, everyone's talking about opening up. Well, you know, we could have every governor in the country say, open up, no restrictions, throw your doors open. But as long as people turn on the news at night and they read about COVID and infections and people in the hospitals, you know, are they going to come out? You know, and what will the demand be? And I've read some pretty, and I'm sure you guys have too, some pretty not so encouraging statistics about, you know, 22% or 20% of consumers say they would eat out at a restaurant right now if they're allowed to. So I do think, you know, assuring consumers and the public about individual efforts, what everyone's doing at their facility is really important, obviously. And then continue it from the mayor, you know, the city, the governor, communicating as to why the situation is getting better in Kentucky. And it really brings it back to the first principle of just, why is this all happening? We have this pandemic, this virus going through our communities. And absent a declining rate of infection or some, you know, medical breakthrough, I do think it's going to be very difficult to restore demand to levels before coronavirus. So I think, you know, hopefully there's somewhat of a happy medium where people can find and figure it out, and hopefully we can get there. So I think it's really good you touched on it. And also, to your point, for us specifically and breweries, I believe I've heard they have defined the occupancy for restaurants, the governor. Have they done that for brewers? Is that something you guys need to find? Like, what is it because a lot of, you know, tap rooms operate different than distilleries. You guys really are like more a restaurant. Is that something you need guidance on? Or
I think at least if we're looking at the Ohio model, I think we would fall into the category of restaurants in just about all parameters. And so I believe, DH, correct me if I'm wrong, but we would be held to about a 33% occupancy in our tap rooms as well.
Yeah, that's the way I understand it, Bishop. And then the one thing, Amir, that we do need to find would be, I know, speaking with my Kentucky Guild of Brewers hat on, a lot of our members look very, very different. That some have, you know, no food that I think would be very easily considered a bar. But we would just like that, you know, semantics, right? Like restaurant, we just need him to say tap rooms without a food piece, our bar. But there is a gray area with, you take a look at West 6, for example, that has Smithtown Seafood, which is a, you know, it's a restaurant food piece that's not under their license. They don't operate it. They share the same space. Mirror Twin Rolling Oven, the same situation. Mile Kentucky Foam Rolling Oven in Georgetown, same situation. So, you know, we're at Country Boy, the kitchen, that's our food piece. I think that we would be easily considered a restaurant. But we do need guidance of, does West 6, do they classify? And so if there's any way we could have those conversations of having him and his team look at what that actually looks like. You know, I think it's pretty easy to say, if you're a bar, you're a bar. If you're a tap room that serves alcohol only with trivial food, that I think would be considered that. But that gray area in the middle would be excellent to be defined. Well,
I think that's I'll make a note of it, you know, to define that. And I think it's a very good point because and we can follow up. That also might be one, you know, obviously we have the Kentucky Distillers Association. I'm assuming there's a Brewers Association. We can follow up here and we'll make a note of it. But I imagine you might get quicker, more, you know, clear guidance if they push that forward. Because
yeah, we've asked for guidance on that, but I just more squeaky wheels. Might get answers quicker.
We'll squeak this one. You got it. I'll put it in there.
Thank you, sir.
Just one little thing that I wanted to kind of mention, just to wrap up my section of it, to take a look at people like DH. I don't know how it would necessarily apply to some of the larger distilleries that typically do more of just a gift shop and tours, but was looking at least some of the models that they're doing in other countries where it was more than just a nuclear family, where you almost had like a group that you were allowed to socialize with in public, groups of anywhere from like 10 to 12, that group is the only group that you get to hang out with. So it is, as far as just anything, if they're looking for feedback or input, I think one thing that could give us a good chance to actually have a feasible opportunity to open up and make some money and keep people safe is, you know, like at Lime and Vine, if we can only fit 15 people in there on a single floor because of our 33% occupancy, and I can rent it out to a group of 12, then I at least have some guaranteed money rather than hoping that I can get, 7 groups of 2 to sit 6 feet apart from each other, and hopefully, because there's alcohol involved, not have somebody from one group get too close to another group, or there's going to be other social things that I see for people like DH and I that have tap rooms, where you have somebody that's a hypochondriac and taking this very serious getting out for the first time, compared to somebody that never took this serious. And then next thing you know, they're in each other's personal space after a drink or two. And there's a lot of other little things that, are kind of affecting our decision about the May 22nd. So we're still kind of flip-flopping back and forth a little bit.
Andrew, to that point about ideas, and I saw in the questionnaire you touched on that. I think it's a good one. Are you thinking like the antibody testing kind of thing, where then people sort of get vetted and tested, and there's some kind of a way that then they get a card, or it's like a bunch of people sitting there? I don't know if that's what you're thinking about, these groups.
Well, I didn't delve far enough in to see how the country was determining which groups were socially acceptable to be with each other. I did not specifically see anything about an antibody test, but I think it was one of those, like, since you're in close proximity with these people already, like we do get close to each other to some extent as employees here. So there's at least 5 people for a month that I have been in fairly close contact with, and none of us have shown symptoms with each other.
Like a family or something. So like, you can say you have 5 people live in a household together, and or 10 roommates or something like that, then that group is approved. And so maybe it's not antibody testing, but it's just
I think we could figure out, and we could tweak, and I could even look back and see on that study how they decided and determined what a group was. But basically it would allow you and 10 other people to frequent a place like the Ethereal Brewing Public House, and we could rent out the entire floor to you, and you wouldn't have to worry about being 6 feet apart from each other. You could kind of go
to that question. Like, so if restaurants can open 33% capacity, so we all know how that math works out. But and they say, okay, you got to have restaurant tables 6 feet apart. Have they identified how many people you can have in a group at one of those tables that are 6 feet apart?
The number that I heard from our executive director of the guild, and it may just be a number at the moment, was a 6-person nuclear family.
6-person nuclear family.
Yes.
What if the Octomom shows up?
Apparently 2 would have to, 3 if you count her too.
Amir, I don't know if they've said that yet. Like I said, that Montana guideline I sent over to you limits the groups to 10 as far as phase 2 when they open back up. And it would be the same thing like Bishop's talking about, which is that's 10 people that you have chosen to be around, but your group of 10 has to be 6 feet.
I think this is good because we need this for Kentucky, right? I mean, other states are defining this, and I guess that's an important question. If the governor of Kentucky hasn't defined it, we need that defined.
The one thing, and I'll shut up and let everybody else talk, but again, these are the talks and the issues that we're having right now. Right. Is that if we do open up at 33% capacity, like Bishop's saying, and we put tables out there, and we've got a good plan. Our people are some of the best in the industry. They're awesome servers, they're awesome bartenders, but they are not law enforcement. And so if a bunch of our fun-loving Scott County Toyota workers want to get together in a big group of 20, I don't have faith. That's not a good way to say it. I don't feel comfortable putting some of our 22-year-old bartenders in a position to have to go separate a group of 20-year-old or 20-something 300-pound Toyota workers up. And they don't really have a way other than wagging their finger at them to say, don't get close to each other. So that's a very real concern that I know a lot of restaurants are looking at.
You look at the McDonald's and the Dollar Tree stuff. I mean,
so just something that I know is on the forefront of everybody's mind, but that right there is really the catalyst, which is pushing us to say, hey, we're going to open up later just so we can at least let some of the people that are going to flood the bars get that out of their system. And the people that, now when they're back to normal, hopefully they'll understand the severity that we're addressing the issue, and they take it that seriously.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Well, I'll give you guys for us at Pepper Distillery. We have been closed completely in the retail and tour operations since March. We are at this time not planning on reopening the retail operation later this month. As everyone's been discussing, we would not be allowed to do tours or tastings. It would just be opening the retail doors. The majority of our visitors are, on the Bourbon Trail. They're not local. So for us, it doesn't make a lot of sense from just a business point of view to open the retail shop under that environment where it's everyone's in face masks and you're temperature checking everybody, and it's just retail. And from that business point of view, additionally, there is a safety factor. Again, we have some common areas throughout the distillery, and the majority of our business is a manufacturing and wholesale business, which is still able to operate, and they're keeping busy. And so we need to be concerned about that. There's a lot of changing rules and laws and things being interpreted in terms of safe workplaces and factories, OSHA related things. And so when you just factor all these together, and also really what we think is just going to be the lack of demand, we're just deciding not to do it. So it's a safety, it's a business decision, and it's an overall company operational decision. We're also really just looking to, obviously the city and the mayor, but the governor and the CDC and everybody's guidelines that they put out about what we can and can't do. I think that's sort of the end all be all, right? I mean, that just tells us what we can do, and from there we can make our plans and make decisions based off of that. And then really the third thing too is just the demand. I mean, if people aren't on the Bourbon Trail, it's not a huge incentive for us to open for tours and to push for it, especially with the safety concerns. So that's really brings it back to sort of the lack of a dramatic decline in COVID cases or a medical treatment. It's hard to see a way of going back to normal. But of course, if things kind of start to get back to a new normal, and we look throughout Kentucky and we see other distilleries beginning to resume operations in a thoughtful way and have some success and see some green shoots out there, I think that's what we're going to look at really closely, and how they're doing it and how they're doing it in a safe way. And so that's really what we're taking into consideration. We might do some curbside things, I'm not really sure. But these are the things that we're watching for at the Pepper Distillery. So, yeah, okay, great. So I think that gets us through the first item on the agenda. We'll go into the second one, which is what businesses and organizations in our sector need to reopen safely under the governor's 10 rules to reopen. I don't know if anybody has that handy. I'm not so good at Zoom and multitasking and tech. I think we might have touched on a number of those things in our discussion that we've had beforehand. So I don't know if we need to go over all the 10 rules unless we want to, or somebody wants to read those off. But is there anything that has jumped out to anybody from those? And I'll just open the floor to, of course, the subcommittee members, Pete, Meredith, Andrew, DH. Anything you guys have seen under those 10 rules that stand out?
Yeah, I've got them right here. Continue telework where possible, phase return to work, on-site temperature health checks, universal mask, unnecessary PPE, close common areas, enforce social distancing, limit face-to-face meetings, sanitizer, hand wash stations, special accommodations, testing plan. Again, we, especially those of us that operate restaurants, are already regulated by the health department. So we already have hand washing. Everyone has to be food service certified and have food handlers permits if they're in the kitchen. Bartenders have to be STAR trained, which is a little bit of cleanliness in there, more on the administrative side. But like things like closed common areas concern me. I assume that means if you were Toyota, they have to have the break room closed, but like it doesn't make much sense here at the brewery here if I have to have my break room closed and my tap room's allowed to be open. Does that make sense? Like, our people, again, like Bishop was saying, we try to maintain social distancing here at work as much as we can, but we've all been together since March 16th or 15th when we decided to close, basically. So it just, some of that stuff is more of me to communicate to my folks inside to give them confidence as well. I think one thing we all need to touch on is, I think my job has really pivoted so much these days from not being so much of a brand manager or, brewery owner to like morale officer and keeping people's spirits up and telling them we're going to be okay and that kind of stuff. So with these kind of things that they see and hear, how do we communicate to them what's important, what's necessary? Do my bar staff and like in Montana, what they did is there's no bar service. All bar stools have to be removed. Nobody can sit at the bar. all servers have to go, or all your bartenders would then turn into servers. They go up to tableside service. Menus have to be thrown away or sanitized. I think the smart thing would be paper one-use menus, one-use food. There's no dishes. It's all single-use serving stuff, all those kind of things. But at the same time, do our staff have to wear masks? Do we expect our consumers to wear masks? There's something to be said for ambiance and things like that. Do people want to come in when your server looks like they're in a hazmat suit? That doesn't inspire much customer confidence and consumer confidence. So just anything we can do as far as temperature health checks. Does that mean I'm checking my employees? Does that mean I'm checking my consumers that are coming in? Because also, we've got a lot of great people here at work, but we do not have anybody that's a doctor or a nurse that's qualified to take people's temperatures and things of that nature. So just any further guidance. I think on my questionnaire didn't have a lot of depth to any of my answers, and forgive me for that, but I think on any of this stuff, any further guidance we can get in the specifics to get the specificity and all that kind of stuff is really going to help us understand what we can and can't do, shouldn't do.
I think that's really good.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think kind of to DH's point, we are trying to think about our individual industries, but none of us really come from a medical background. So trying to tell people, the beer drinkers, that, we decided that this is what you need to do to come in here could be a little tough. And, I'd look at taking the temperatures, what equipment are we using to take temperature, and how accurate can we feel with it taking temperature? Because the first time that you get somebody that already had a drink trying to come into your place and you say, hey, you're running, 100.1, you got to keep moving down the walk, and what if they decide they don't want to? And so, I mean, it's really going to get interesting. Like DH says, we've got excellent employees that are very well trained and can handle a multitude of scenarios. But, if somebody starts to get rowdy and say that, hey, I don't want to abide by these rules because I don't think it really applies to me and it's all BS anyway, I mean, then you're going to enforcement of saying, hey, you're not allowed in here without a mask. You're not allowed in here because of your temperature. And then how do you address them after that, especially if they do not take kindly to it? So it's super interesting just seeing how this is going to work out, especially because we're all, alcohol purveyors, and, alcohol can cause people to act differently. And so I think it's going to be very interesting. Like us compared to DH and Kentucky Ale, we do almost all of our business. I'd say almost 90% of our business is on-site consumption sales. So, for us, we fall heavily on people showing up here and either leaving with product or consuming product on site. We don't do a lot of gift shop retail. We don't do a lot of distribution. So, it's paramount for us to be able to get people to walk inside our doors and buy product. But at the same time, you have to, like I said earlier, A, give them the confidence to do it, and B, you need to feel safe as well as your staff, because I have a lot of concerns with my staff of trying to step into situations that may get above what they're capable of handling pretty quickly.
I think go ahead, Meredith.
Yeah, I think the way I understand what the governor said about face masks is that it's not a requirement that everyone wears face masks, and each individual, every individual's place can determine if you are going to require face masks. So if you as a brewer don't want to require face masks, you don't have to. And you might want to check with the governor's office, but that's what I understood. I've been watching the press conference every day. So it's up to us. Like, we are going to require face masks for our visitors, but that's our choice. We're already doing temperature checks, and literally it takes like a second and a half. You put it up against your head and it's done. So we're requiring that, but I think it's up to the individual locations whether or not they want to require that for your location. Does anybody else have that thought?
I think it is, and there's not going to be a strict enforcement by police or the governor, but I do think it's incumbent on everyone to think about that this is uncharted territory in times, and when we keep in mind employee safety, and could be some responsibilities or things after the fact that people bring up. So I just say, this is just me being a cautious business person. I think people should keep that in mind. But I think what this all kind of leads me to like really understand is for these governor's 10 rules, we need specificity. And within this committee, we have distilleries and breweries that actually really have kind of different operations. I can tell you at our distillery, and Meredith, probably with you guys, we close at 7 p.m. in the retail shop. We really don't operate like a bar. And so we really have more of a retail and a tour operation, and then there's a factory back there. Whereas there's clearly a concern, I think, with DH and Andrew, where you guys are operating a little later into the evening. It's more of a bar restaurant scene, and you can have issues there with people, drinking and not listening to the rules, and you can tell them stay 6 feet apart. Next thing you know, you got a ball of 30 people. So I think that what might be helpful in this situation, I would think, and I just took a survey from the Kentucky Distillers Association a day or two ago. We're part of the KDA. They had a very detailed survey from all the members because I think they want to bring together feedback to communicate to the governor, and then put together a set of guidelines for distillers specifically for how we operate and we reopen. And I would imagine that would be helpful on the brewery side. And I think what we can recommend here, partially is for, greater specificity, but also, along for breweries and distilleries specifically, and maybe anything the city can do and the governor can do to help those associations, the Kentucky Distillers Association and the Brewers Association, to craft that set of guidelines so that, DH and Andrew, you guys aren't like, you can operate in lockstep, and you can also operate under what you guys all think is best practices in Kentucky for how a brewery should operate a tap room into the evening.
Well, I think that is paramount, because DH will be the first one to tell you that people will draw lines in the sand on our behalf of saying that they're doing this because they back Republicans. They say they're doing this because they back Democrats. I mean, it happens like that.
Totally.
And, I mean, DH has whiplash like crazy because of the smallest sentence that comes out of Georgetown just gets turned into a wildfire. So if we're choosing that, people need to wear masks and they're not, all of a sudden people are going to start drawing lines saying that Ethereal Brewing aligns this way, Country Boy aligns this way. So having a more governing body from above telling us, hey, this is what you need to kind of follow, at least allows us to say, hey guys, it's not me.
It absolutely allows you to say it. And, again, there is a liability thing. People, I think, really need to be prudent and be cautious of. And so to have a set of guidelines and say, look, we're operating under the best guidelines and practices as stated forth by, the KDA or the Kentucky Brewers Association, I think that that's going to be very reassuring to you guys and everybody to have something to fall back on, as opposed to just saying, well, this is what we threw against the wall and saw it stuck, and then we had this problem. I think that'll give you guys and everybody cover. Mary?
Mayor, I need to jump in just real quick. I mean, this is a good conversation. We're going to have to end the call in about 5 minutes so Quinn can set up the next one.
Okay, sounds good. Mary?
All I was going to say, Amir, is that I know when I was talking yesterday with the United States Travel Association that they are very much encouraging all of their members to post signage that talks about both the responsibility of the institution or the organization and the individual's responsibility, that we have a shared responsibility in all of this. And they really reinforce signage over and over and over again to create redundancies and to create confidence, to have visible cues. And so I think that when you're thinking about what kind of signage you're going to be putting up in your respective places of business about here are the things we're doing to sanitize and to clean, you can also share what the responsibility of the individual is.
Totally.
Safe environment for the whole.
That's a really good idea. I mean, almost as a practice, people come into your space, you make them buy into it. I mean, make them understand that you're, it's a tentative ground that they're coming in and you're letting them in, and they're welcome, but they need to be aware and operate on a certain protocol. So you almost had that conversation when people enter your space, as opposed to later on when you're having to tell them about something.
We're doing the same thing. We're going to do PSAs and we're going to record them and put them on our website and our social media channels too, so that before people even get to our location, they're going to know what's expected of them and what we're doing to protect our team and the visitor.
That's great. That's really
Yeah,
great.
I think forcing those social pressures on people will be big, because if we get a second spike, I think that'll be absolutely detrimental to trying to reopen a second time. If you have that consumer confidence shaken because we go right back to where we started,
Yep.
it's going to be crazy clawing out of that.
Brings which
Mayor, one quick thing that I just want to throw in there, and Kevin, you know I can talk all day. I promise I'll be brief. On the guild level, we are asking for clarification on a couple different things. Number one being what's going to happen post this. Like, they've relaxed a whole lot of regulatory stuff as far as delivery of alcohol, how it can be packaged. I mean, we got people delivering beer in milk jugs and making cocktails in mason jars and deliver to people's houses. You know, how does that go back to normal? How, you know, so we're asking for guidance. You know, what is going to be expected here going forward once things are out of the bag? It's hard to put them back in it. You know, you're still gonna be able to go to the Mexican spot and get you to go margarita when this is all said and done, because people are really enjoying that. You know, the other thing is I would offer up maybe a suggestion that Kevin, if you guys want to take this on the local level, on the state level, basically saying, hey, we would be willing to look at amending hours to say, you know, tap rooms and restaurants would be required to close at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock or something of that nature, because we are right. The longer you get into the evening, the longer people's duration of time gets at the bars, the less they're going to be concerned about it, as we all know. So I would offer up that we would be willing to you know, adhere to that, assuming that we would not be held to that for forever. Right, like if breweries have to close at 7 o'clock, that wouldn't just be mandated from now on to the end of time. So, again, when they're out of the box, hard to put back in. It's just a couple of things. I think maybe if we said, hey, the Guild of Brewers or the restaurants in Lexington, if saying they're willing to close early, it might get us some goodwill with the public too, that they know we're doing everything we can to
In between lunch and dinner stuff, yeah, just anything we have to do.
DH, I think that's a good point, and I think it goes to the point. The one guidance we have is how are we going to live into what the governor eventually puts out for the various industries, including this one. So things like that. So I think if you all want to get Ashton, maybe some points you really want to make sure we get into something. And especially a couple of you have mentioned what your associations, whether they're at the state or the national association, has recommended. Maybe we can include those. And then if you want to jump on one final call to kind of go over those points and make sure we've got them right, I think Quinn can set that up and we'd be good to go. Amir, what do you think?
That sounds good. And I know we're running out of time. So there was a last item, you know, a process for scaling back operations in the event we face a second wave. So we could touch on that there.
Right.
And I think I can also probably extrapolate some key points from the first two things we discussed and throw them in there for as a summary to discuss in that as well.
So what time would work good? I mean, Quinn's kind of the keeper of the calendar for these.
You want to send out an email with the...
Actually, it's easier because of notification requirements if we go ahead and, while everybody's on this call, set it if we can.
I don't have much going on these days.
I'm pretty open.
Yep. I mean, early next week, Monday, Tuesday, I'm pretty open too.
How does, if noon's a good time for everybody, how does noon on Tuesday sound?
Let me look. My life is like wall to wall WebEx meetings. So let me check. Tuesday at noon?
Yes.
Tuesday at noon, the 12th, correct?
Correct.
Work for me.
Works for me.
Perfect.
I had to learn how to use Zoom to get on this call, so I'm open.
Hey, DH, we had a good lunch from there a couple of Saturdays ago.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate that. I'll pass it along to the team. Thank you all.
Right.
Appreciate all you guys have done. Thank you so much.
Thank you. If there's anything else, I think we got to wrap it up. So any final thoughts? All right. Thank you everybody for participating. Take care.
Thank you, Amir.
You all. Appreciate it.